The first thing they told me when I woke up in chains was not to make eye contact with the tall, fur-covered woman at the end of the hall. Naturally, I stared at her immediately. She was massive, all claws, ears twitching, sharp canines glinting. When I asked if this was the drunk tank, the guards laughed so hard one of them almost dropped his spear. Apparently, I hadn't been arrested for fighting in the bar, I'd been chosen. The princess walked up, sniffed me, and asked in a growl, "Do you offer your hand willingly, human?" Now, where I'm from, that's how people ask for a handshake, maybe a business deal, maybe marriage if you're in a rom-com. So, naturally, I gave her my right hand. Bad move. She didn't shake it. She bit it. Hard. The room erupted. Guards slammed their fists against their chests, howling approval. My hand was bleeding, my brain was confused, and the princess's eyes glowed like she'd just signed the contract of her life. "Claimed," she said. "This one is mine." I pulled my hand back, holding the bite mark like an idiot, and stammered, "Lady, I don't know your customs, but back home we usually at least go to dinner first." The guards loved that. One called out, "The prince jokes already." Another added, "He bleeds well, strong veins." I didn't know whether to laugh or faint. By the time they dragged me into a throne room that smelled faintly of wet dog and expensive perfume, the nickname had already stuck. Prince. Everywhere I turned, Prince this, Prince that. Each time they said it, there was a smirk, a wink, or a howl of laughter. It didn't feel like respect. It felt like I'd just been drafted into an inside joke I didn't understand. The princess sat on her throne and announced to the court that she had claimed my hand. The words echoed across the chamber, bouncing off marble pillars. Everyone clapped, bowed, or laughed. I raised my bandaged hand. For the record, where I'm from, claiming my hand usually means proposing marriage. Just making sure we're not rushing things. The court erupted in whispers. Some gasped, others chuckled. The princess leaned forward, her smile sharp. "Yes. Marriage. Bond. Bite. Same." I swallowed hard. Great. Fantastic. I always dreamed my big day would come with tetanus shots. Apparently, sarcasm didn't translate well, because the guards cheered again like I'd just delivered a love poem. One of them muttered, "The prince resists, but the mark will bind him." Another snorted, "He doesn't even know what he gave her." I tried to explain I hadn't given anything, but they weren't listening. In their culture, no one survived a bite from the princess unless they were destined. Most people fainted, went into shock, or, died. The fact I was still standing, complaining, even, meant I was officially part of the royal family. Lucky me. The princess inspected my bandaged hand like it was now her property. Human flesh, strange. But it holds. Yeah, it holds a grudge too, I muttered. She tilted her head, confused, but the guards laughed anyway, probably assuming it was some bedroom joke. That's when the double meaning started to sink in. Claiming the hand wasn't just a ritual. It was suggestive. Intimate. Everyone in the room knew it, and they were looking at me like I'd just skipped straight to the honeymoon. One guard leaned close and whispered, "Congratulations, Prince. She's had her first taste." "First taste of what?" I asked, instantly regretting it. His grin was all teeth. "You'll find out." The worst part? My hand throbbed, but not just with pain. Something was happening under the skin. Heat spread up my arm like liquid fire. I felt stronger, sharper, like my body had been plugged into a car battery. I shook it off. "Okay, great bonding ceremony, everybody. Can I go home now?" The princess growled low in her throat, and the room went silent. "Home is here. Hand is mine. Blood is mine. You are mine." And just like that, every guard in the room dropped to one knee and shouted, "Prince!" I wanted to argue, to explain this was all a misunderstanding, but what came out of my mouth was, "Do I at least get dental included with this marriage plan?" The laughter rolled through the chamber again, and for the first time, I realized humor was my only weapon. They expected fear, obedience, or silence. Instead, they got sarcasm. That made me dangerous in a way they didn't understand. The princess stood, towering over me, and placed a clawed hand on my shoulder. Her voice was low enough for only me to hear. "You are mine now. But, perhaps I am yours too." It was meant to be terrifying, but the guards still found ways to chuckle as they whispered, "The prince is marked. The princess is hungry." And me? I just tried to keep breathing, tried not to faint, and tried not to think too hard about the fact that somewhere in the middle of this alien soap opera, I might have just gotten engaged by accident, promoted against my will, and maybe, just maybe, infected with werewolf DNA. If this was what they called a honeymoon, I was doomed. They didn't waste time easing me into royal life. The very next morning, I was dragged out of bed, dragged off the fur-covered slab they called a sleeping stone, and shoved into a dining hall that looked like it belonged in a medieval feast, if medieval Europe had been ruled by wolves with gold crowns and bad table manners. The princess sat at the head of the table, regal and smug, while I was plopped down beside her like a prized pet. The first course arrived, a platter of glowing, half-melted bones. Everyone cracked them open with their teeth, slurping the marrow like soup. My plate clinked as one was dropped in front of me. I leaned over to the guard at my side. "You got anything more, cooked?" The guard grinned, showing more fangs than necessary. "It is cooked. By moonlight. Best served raw." I smiled weakly and pushed the bone back like it was radioactive. "Back home, we call this food poisoning." The princess growled, and the hall went quiet. She leaned closer, her breath warm on my ear. "You eat. You are mine. You must show strength." I took a deep breath, grabbed the bone, and bit down. It shattered in my mouth, flooding my tongue with iron and grit. I gagged, chewed, swallowed, and forced a smile. Delicious. Really tastes like calcium. The hall roared with laughter, and someone shouted, "The prince feasts like a warrior." I wasn't sure if they were impressed or just enjoying the show of a human nearly choking to death. Either way, my reputation as a prince seemed to grow with every humiliation. After dinner, the princess announced I would accompany her to court. That meant standing in a massive chamber while a parade of nobles begged for favors, whined about land disputes, or challenged each other to duels over who had the bigger tail. I tried not to laugh, but the longer I watched, the more it felt like intergalactic reality TV. At one point, a noble pointed at me and sneered, "This human cannot be your consort. He is weak." I leaned forward, smiled, and said, "Buddy, I may be weak, but at least I can pronounce my own name without howling at the ceiling." The court gasped, then laughed, then howled. The noble's ears flattened in humiliation, and the princess smirked like she'd just won a bet. From then on, the guards kept nudging me, whispering things like, "Sharp tongue, sharp fang," and "The prince fights with words, dangerous." What they didn't realize was that sarcasm was the only weapon I had. They had claws, teeth, and centuries of warrior tradition. I had a mouth that never shut up. And in a culture where every phrase could mean 3 different things, I had the home advantage. The double meanings followed me everywhere. When the princess introduced me at ceremonies, she'd say, "He is bound by my hand." The crowd would murmur, some nodding in respect, others snickering at the innuendo. When I tried to shake someone's hand, they'd wink and ask if I was offering to be claimed again. One guard even asked if humans had more than 2 hands, because I seemed too eager to give mine away. I played along, mostly because fighting it made things worse. If they wanted a prince who survived by wordplay, fine, I'd be the galaxy's first sarcastic royal consort. But there were moments when the humor cracked and the weight of it hit me. Late at night, the bite throbbed under my skin, glowing faintly when the moon shone through the window. The princess would watch me with eyes that burned like embers, and I'd realize this wasn't just a joke to her. She hadn't bitten me for comedy. She'd done it because, in her world, that was how you chose someone. Still, the comedy never stopped. Once, during a training session, a warrior handed me a blade the size of a lamppost and told me to swing it. I nearly toppled forward, muttering, Back home, we call this a lawsuit waiting to happen. The guards roared, clapping me on the back so hard I thought my ribs cracked. One shouted, "The prince swings light but stabs deep," which I'm pretty sure was meant to be a compliment and an innuendo at the same time. Everywhere I went, the title followed me. Prince in that tongue carried weight, but the way they said it, always with a grin, always with a nudge, made it sound like they were in on a private joke I couldn't escape. It was humiliating, but also, somehow, empowering. I'd walked in as a prisoner and stumbled into a crown. The princess seemed delighted by the chaos. When the nobles challenged me, she defended me. When the guards teased me, she smirked but never stopped them. And when I finally snapped one evening and shouted, "Stop calling me prince like it's a punchline," she leaned back, eyes gleaming, and whispered, "But you are. Punchline, lifeline, mine." The room laughed, the guards howled, and I realized there was no way out. The title was mine, the bite was permanent, and every joke at my expense only made me harder to ignore. And the strangest part? A little piece of me started to enjoy it. The gossip spread faster than I could heal. Everywhere I walked in the palace, whispers followed. The princess had claimed my hand, and in their culture that wasn't just about a bite, it was practically foreplay announced in public. Every guard that passed gave me that look, the one that said, "We know what the princess sees in you," even though I hadn't seen anything except teeth and blood. At first, I thought it was paranoia. Then I caught two attendants arguing about whether the princess had bitten me hard enough to seal the bond in flesh. When they noticed me, one blushed and muttered, "Forgive us, prince. We were only wondering how long you lasted." I nearly dropped the goblet I was holding. Lasted? The word carried weight here, and none of it innocent. The bite didn't fade, it pulsed. At night it burned hotter, like my body was sinking with hairs. The princess liked to sit close, claws tracing the bandage, eyes gleaming with possession. Sometimes she'd lean in too near, whispering things that sounded like promises but felt like threats. "You are mine," she'd purr. "But I can be yours, too, if you dare claim." I wasn't sure if she was inviting me into a throne or a bed, or both, but the guards seemed convinced it was the latter. They'd snicker every time she touched my shoulder, and one even offered me a jug of something called moonfire, winking as he said, "Strength for the royal knights." The court treated me like an oddity. Nobles lined up not to challenge me this time, but to measure me. They asked bizarre questions. Did humans prefer to howl before or after mating? Did my bite endurance suggest other forms of stamina? Did my species have a second heart hidden somewhere lower? Every question sounded scientific until they laughed behind their hands, and then I realized I wasn't in a council chamber, I was in a cosmic locker room. The princess seemed amused by my discomfort. At one gathering, she stood and announced proudly, "My human bleeds well, fights with words, and does not break when bitten. A prince worthy of my fangs." The nobles clapped politely, but the guards erupted in cheers. One shouted, "Strong hand, stronger bond." Another called out, "His already half-tamed." And I couldn't stop myself. I raised my glass and said, "Trust me, I'm not tamed. I'm just really bad at saying no to dental work." That line sealed my reputation. From then on, every smirk, every grin, every mocking bow came with a new layer of innuendo. The word prince had become shorthand for everything they thought happened between me and their princess, most of which hadn't even crossed my mind yet. But the way she looked at me, the hunger simmering just beneath her regal composure, told me it was only a matter of time. The tension wasn't just in the court, it was in the private moments. Sometimes, when she leaned too close, I caught her scent, sharp and wild, like smoke and pine. It sent a shiver through me, a reaction I tried to laugh off but couldn't ignore. Other times, her hand lingered too long on mine, claws brushing my skin, and I felt the bond humming, calling for more. And yet, I fought it with humor. Humor was safer than surrender. When she asked if I feared being consumed, I answered, "Only if you serve me with those glowing bones again." When she promised her bite would keep me alive through battle, I said, "Good, because I nearly died trying to eat dinner." But the bond had teeth, and sarcasm couldn't dull them forever. One evening, during a council debate, a rival noble challenged her right to me. "A human cannot be prince," he snarled. "The bond is weak. Let him prove his worth, or release him." The princess stood, her growl shaking the hall. "He is mine. His hand is mine. His blood is mine." Then she looked at me, eyes daring, and said, "Speak, prince. Show them why you are worthy." My mouth worked faster than my brain. "I may not have claws or fangs, but I've survived your cooking, your court, and your bite. If that doesn't make me worthy, nothing will." The hall erupted. Nobles muttered, guards howled, and the princess laughed, a sound rich, dangerous, and undeniably pleased. She placed her arm around me, pulling me close, as though staking her claim again in front of everyone. That night, the bite pulsed hotter than ever, spreading heat through my veins until I could barely think straight. She came to me, her voice low, her eyes soft but burning. "You fight with words," she said. "But words can cut deeper than claws. Be careful, my prince. They may bind me to you as tightly as my bite bound you to me." I should have joked. I should have deflected. But all I could say was, "Maybe I don't mind being bound." Her smile was sharp, triumphant. "Good. Then let them laugh. Let them smirk. They do not understand. The bond is not a joke." She leaned closer, her breath brushing my ear. "It is a promise." The guards outside the chamber snickered when I left, whispering their usual innuendos, but for once, I didn't argue. Because deep down, I knew they were right. Something had shifted. The joke was starting to cut both ways. And the worst, or best, part? I wasn't sure I wanted to escape it anymore. The challenge came sooner than expected. Word had spread across the empire that the princess had bound herself to a human, and not everyone liked the idea. By the time I walked into the great hall for what I thought was another round of bone-crunching dinners, half a dozen armored nobles were waiting, their tails bristling and eyes glowing with the promise of violence. One of them stepped forward, claws scraping the floor. "A man cannot be prince. He is soft. He is prey. Let him prove himself, or let the bond be broken." The princess bared her fangs, ready to shred him, but I knew that wouldn't solve anything. If I hid behind her forever, the jokes about me being half-tamed would never stop. So I raised my hand, the bitten one, the scar bright under the torchlight, and said, "Fine. You want proof? You'll get it." I didn't fight with claws or blades. I fought with my mouth, and not the way the gods kept joking about. I pointed at the noble and said, "You think I'm soft? Try surviving your princess's cooking. You think I'm prey? I survived her bite. You call me weak, but I'm standing here with one hand claimed and the rest of me still intact. Can any of you say the same?" The hall broke into laughter. Even the nobles who wanted my head cracked smiles despite themselves. I pressed the advantage. "Look at me. Small, fragile, human. And yet here I am, not dead, not broken, not bowing. Maybe strength isn't about claws or size. Maybe it's about surviving what should kill you and still having the guts to laugh." The princess's eyes gleamed with pride. The nobles bristled but couldn't argue. One tried, muttering, "Words are wind." I grinned. "Yeah? Funny thing about wind, it can put out fire, carry seeds, or flatten a house if you're not careful. You should pay more attention to it." That line did it. The gods howled, the nobles shut up, and the princess laughed so loudly the windows rattled. She wrapped her arm around me, claws lightly digging into my shoulder, and announced, "He speaks as a prince. He endures as a prince. He is my mate, my menace, my chosen." The hall erupted in a chant of "Prince! Prince! Prince!" It was supposed to be mocking, but this time, it felt different. Less like a punchline, more like a crown slipping onto my head whether I wanted it or not. Later that night, in the quieter dark of her chambers, the princess studied me with those burning eyes. "You fight with nothing but words," she said, almost curious. "And yet you bend warriors with them. Why?" Because where I come from, I told her, words are sharper than any blade. Claws leave scars, but words, they stick. She tilted her head, as though turning that thought over. Then she leaned close, her lips brushing the scar on my hand. Then speak carefully, Prince. You may cut me deeper than my own bite. The heat in my veins flared, the bond thrumming like a drumbeat under my skin. For once, I didn't joke. Maybe you're not the only one who claimed something. Her smile was sharp, dangerous, and almost tender. Good. Then let them laugh. Let them smirk. They think this is comedy. They do not know it is conquest. The guards outside laughed when they heard us talking, muttering about royal knights and princes' stamina. They would always laugh, always find innuendos in everything I did. But now, it didn't sting. Because they were laughing at a man who had survived a bite no one else could, turned mockery into power, and carved a place for himself in a world that wanted to spit him out. By the next council, the same nobles who had doubted me were bowing low, addressing me as prince without the smirk. The guards still grinned, of course, but now it felt less like mockery and more like camaraderie. Every title has baggage, and mine just happened to come with fangs attached. The princess claimed my hand, but I claimed something too, a role I never asked for, a bond one didn't understand, and a respect I earned the only way a human could, by refusing to shut up. As the chants of Prince echoed again through the halls, I raised my scarred hand high and gave them a grin. Fine. If being bitten makes me royalty, then somebody better warn the dentists back home. The hall roared. The princess leaned close, her teeth grazing my ear, and whispered, "You are mine." And for once, I didn't argue.